That would be nice. Good thinking. Now, the one thing I need you to do is find pretty good stuff, huh?
Oh, let me bring my dog. Wait, let me bring my new one. I'll bring my new like 1 year. Everybody. She's our age. She's older than that little girl. She's at work. Yeah.
o sea, nadie estaba ahí, ¿sabes?
No tengo mis amigos melómanos ya.
Por eso yo dije sola. Pero yo no sé si iba a ser como un hijo. Yo dije, no, no, a ver, aquí está claro.
No, I'm gonna go, man. It was already going, ¿verdad?
Me lió que se miraban ahí.
Sí, it had like shit.
¿Te cortaste? ¿Cómo te estaba pasando? Como que traías un granillo y te
I'm gonna get hair. I'm gonna go bald on Saturday.
siempre dice la misma pendeja.
Right, and he never does it. Yeah, I'm gonna go with Bruno.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm
Al chile, voy a hablar de mi casa y voy a llegar a casa con el de I was gonna say this Saturday, pero
Saturday I can't.
no tengo dinero con
I'm gonna go to the morning. I can't go to your house. Oh no, I'm gonna go in the morning. Oh, you were gonna go to my house? I'm gonna tell my mom that.
Bueno, se nos sentado ahora. ¿Quién estaba?
¿Tu domingo?
No, estoy chingando la tumba, por favor.
También. Domino le dicen. Pizza, ¿no? Pizza, Saturday? Saturday. Come to my house or what? Yeah, I would.
Saturday? That's the Saturday.
It's Saturday. My house.
No, you're going to
Play Minecraft. There's an event on Saturday. Yeah, we're playing Minecraft all day. Minecraft. Hey, y'all down to go to my house and play Minecraft?
First, I
would.
I thought you were all going to say
I'll play Red Dead Redemption 2 in my house. Oh, no. Me mata. The what? Or you're not gonna recruit the army? Your brother's were in the army? I thought you were Marine Corps.
No, I went to Air Force.
I thought you did.
No, it's just, you want to talk to them?
I thought
You
you
want to
said.
talk to the Air Force recruiter, but well, not Air Force, go to the Army recruiter.
Is it Javier? That guy was trying to talk to me like, hey, you ROTC kid, you should join the army. Me? You're not doing it. You should do it. I'm not doing it until next year. Yeah, me too. Shit, we're not even gonna be here. Okay, go in the morning? Right. ¿Cómo? Luis.
Hey, no ha llegado la maestra.
You should be here, because we weren't looking.
No,
y'all can slide a little bit this way. That's good. That's good.
I know, that's the point.
Now, do you want Glendo in the front?
No. Yes.
Or you want him to the side?
Oh, I got it.
Okay, now, really needs to get off the phone before we get out of the picture. All right, so adjutant, you be on the right, full right. There you go. Tell it, get everybody how you want to stand, or tell either, position, tension, parade rest, whatever. Okay, here we go. Look at me. 1, 2, 3. Another one. 1, 2, 3. All right, just gonna check those real quick. See if you like either of those. Does that look good? All right. Yes, ma'am.
5:35.
Okay, 5:35. So about 4 minutes.
Yeah.
5 minutes. Here we go. I have skills.
They just stopped playing around. Oh, we're gonna have it like this when we march, right?
Yeah, come on.
Okay. ¿Qué dijo?
Yeah, I can get a picture of y'all like this.
Good parade.
I think you're going to like those. Very good. Stand. You want to? Okay, very good. Stand. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the command room. Stand with Major Pauline. Tonight's presentation will be about good. So that's it.
a round warm of applause to Mr. Wolf Hoffman, who will be giving you a welcoming remark.
Libraries, the Convention of Business Bureau. And to all of you and all the people that helped us making this remembrance possible. I want to start with a quote by Aldous Huxley that says, "Men do not learn much from the lessons of history, and that is the most important of all the lessons of history." Dear friends, I'm deeply grateful to all of you for helping us further the cause of remembrance. The United States of America is the only country who has seen fit to preserve the memory of the Holocaust and made it a national imperative to do so. An important memorial in Washington, as important word as those words are, for the dead and the living, we must bear witness. For not only are we responsible for the memories of the dead, we are also responsible for what we are doing with those memories. A public library is a place that brings people together with themselves and with ideas and books. People coming from different horizons, who belong to different spheres, who speak different languages, they should feel united. And if possible at all, with some measure of grace, we should in a way be capable of reconciling ourselves. To bring the living together in a spirit of reconciliation is a part of our vision. Today, we are remembering the victims and the heroes, old and young, beggars and industrialists, sages and madmen, military men, diplomats, professors, students, children. Even in the face of persecution and hatred, we still believe in human beings. We still believe and we still have faith. We have faith in humanity and in America. How can one understand that human beings could choose such inhumanity? How can one understand that in spite of everything, there was goodness in those times, in individuals? There were good people living in occupied countries, and there was kindness and tenderness and love inside the campus among the victims. What have we learned? We have learned some lessons, minor lessons. Perhaps that we are responsible and indifference is a sin and a punishment. And we have learned that when people suffer, we cannot remain indifferent. This is a lesson. There are many other lessons that we shall learn together. Today we are learning Mr. John Walls, a hero, a veteran that helped us liberating the victims. Today we will listen to his wisdom story. Thank you, Mr. Walls. Thank you for your life and for your testimony.
During the course of a year, I can go to many different events and do the invocation or benediction and be involved in many different things. But this is truly one of the most special. And I appreciate you welcoming me on such an important day. Oftentimes, a pastor will try to make everyone feel comfortable by telling a joke or something, but this is not a time for jokes. This is a very serious thing. So as an evangelical pastor, I wish to affirm not only my love, but my total solidarity with the Jews of this community, this nation, and the world. I am very proud that I would not have my faith if it was not for the Jew. And so it is absolutely imperative that in living out my faith, that I honor and respect the roots from which I derive that faith. And so today, I once again gladly affirm that, and celebrate life, even in dealing with the horror beyond belief. In the course of 35 years of pastoring here in this community, there have been different times when I've been called upon to be with people at their last moment on this earth. And you never get used to it. You never go, oh, gee. It's a difficult thing, but also I've learned that it's an extremely sacred moment to be with someone as they're departing this world into the next. I cannot even begin to imagine how large the heart of God must be as He witnessed and as the world witnessed the transfer of sacred souls from this world to the next. And so this afternoon, it is my joy and somber responsibility to stand with you in prayer. So please stand with me as we pray. I'm quoting from my rabbi, who was speaking from Deuteronomy when he said, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second like it, love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments." Gracious and loving God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, I thank you for your mercy. And in spite of the horror and man's inhumanity to man, I thank you for your love and that we have the capacity to make choices to love each other and to step out by faith, come to understanding together and reason together and work together, so as not only a man of faith, but as an American citizen, as a member of this community, I bless the Jewish people here, and we just thank you for the opportunity to come together, to remember, and at moments it may feel overwhelming, but to also know that light is greater than the darkness. And we pledge to allow the light to shine from each of us. I pray this in the name of my Lord and Savior. Amen. God bless you. Amen.
I'd like to now call on the United South Middle School ROTC color guard, please, for the presentation of color.
By the United South High School Marine Corps Junior ROTC. The National Color Bearer is Cadet Corporal Marta. The organization color bearer is Cadet Staff Sergeant Castañeda. The colors are flanked by the right rifleman, Cadet Corporal Uribe, and left rifleman, Cadet Corporal Esparza. The adjutant for today is Cadet Corporal Galindo. Adjutant, take your post.
Then put, right, base, forward, arms, forward, march. Forward, here,
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and National Anthem. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next, we will have Valeria Montemayor sing the national anthem.
Oh, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleam, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched, where so gallantly streamed rockets regular, the dawn bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Are good. Order. Ready. Ready. Cut. Right. Ready. Forward. Arm. Forward. Arm.
We'd like to introduce the dignitaries that are here today, including all of the war veterans
Order.
from
Ready.
Korean War conflict.
Ready.
Please stand. See that's recognized.
Cut.
Korean War veterans.
Under guard. Fall out.
World War II veterans, if they would please stand. Thank you for your lives. We'd also like to recognize, never do it without the help of IBC, so we'd like to recognize Becky Garza, who's the Vice President in the International Department at IBC, and she's been there 30 years. Are you here, Becky? We'd also like to recognize Montserrat Vargas, who's the first Vice President at Commerce Bank, and she's the head of the International Department and has been there for 17 years. We'd also like to recognize Gracie Valadez, who's the Vice President at IDC in their BSA Compliance Department, and she's been there for 15 years. Are you here, Gracie? I'd like to recognize the council member from District 6, Dr. Marta Martinez. Dr. Martinez, where are you? We'd like to also recognize Sister Juan Boon Do. She's the principal. Also, Sister Claudette Germain. And now I'd like to invite Dr. Marta Martinez of District 6
everybody hear me? Okay, let's do this the right way because it's a proclamation. So, good evening to everyone that doesn't know me. My name is Marta Martinez. I'm a city council member for District 6. You know, I'm honored, deeply honored to be here today. I didn't know that I was going to be here. I was asked to be here. Now that I've seen what this represents, I'm humbled. I'm humbled to be standing with you gentlemen here who did so much for our country and for the world and for the people that were being persecuted. I'm proud and I'm honored. And I'm humbled simply because if I'm here, if I'm free, it's because of you gentlemen. So thank you. And I want to try one more thing. When we honor veterans, we should all stand up and clap for them. So we're going to clap one more time for the veterans, please. Thank you very much. We're all of different ages, different backgrounds, races. We come from different parts of the world. But we come together today to remember both the terrible tragedies that occurred, as well as the heroism that was displayed during the Holocaust. This was a terrible time of tragedy and horror in our world. But it also showed the brave men and women that stood up against tyranny, that dedicated their time to ensure that this didn't happen again. After the horrors of the Holocaust, we vowed this would never happen again. And days like today, these remembrance days, they make sure that this stays fresh on our memory, that we never forget that this could happen, because we never once believed that this could happen. Every survivor, every victim has a story. Those that helped to liberate Europe, those that suffered, those that have horrible, awful stories to tell. But there's also stories of heroism. Such is the case of Mr. John Ball, World War II veteran joining us here today. Thank you, sir, again, for the service to your country and to our city. So, the thing that's really important to remember is that these sorts of tragedies, these sorts of horrible events, they didn't happen just 50 years ago or 70 years ago or 100 years ago. They're happening now. We're seeing shootings throughout the world. Horrible things that are occurring because people use fear and prejudice, ignorance, intolerance, and we allow those things to happen. We must never allow those things to occur in our community. And Laredo is dedicated to ensuring that we do not have an intolerant nature in our city, that we have no prejudice in our city. That's why we believe in this proclamation. That's why I'm here to deliver this proclamation. We must reevaluate always what we teach our children. We must teach them tolerance, respect, courtesy, equity. That we are all equal under the eyes of the Lord. No matter religion, background, no matter anything, we are equal. This is how we shape a better nation, a better foundation, and a better future for our city and our state and our country. I want to thank everyone here today for taking the time out of your day to be here in such an important event. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and read the proclamation. Official of the Mayor, Laredo, Texas, proclamation. Whereas the Holocaust was the state-sponsored, systematic persecution and annihilation of European Jews by Nazi Germany and its collaborators between 1933 and 1945, 6 million people were murdered. Roma Gypsies, people with disabilities, and Poles were also targeted for destruction or decimation for racial, ethnic, or national reasons, and millions more, including homosexuals, Jehovah's Witnesses, Soviet prisoners of war, political descendants, also suffered grievous oppression and death under Nazi tyranny. And whereas the history of the Holocaust offers an opportunity to reflect on the moral responsibilities of individuals, societies, and governments, and whereas we, the people of the city of Laredo, should always remember the terrible events of the Holocaust and remain vigilant against hatred, persecution, and tyranny. And whereas the days of remembrance have been set aside for the people of the city of Laredo to remember the victims of the Holocaust, as well as to reflect on the need for respect of all peoples. And whereas pursuant to an act of Congress, Public Law 96-388, October 1980, the United States Holocaust Memorial Council designates the days of remembrance of the victims of the Holocaust known as Yom HaShoah. Whereas in memory of the victims of the Holocaust and in honor of the survivors, as well as the rescuers and liberators, and further proclaim that we, as the citizens of the city of Laredo, should work to promote the human dignity and confront hate wherever and whenever it occurs. Now, therefore, I, Dr. Marte A. Martinez, Council Member for District 6, on behalf of the Mayor and City Council, do hereby proclaim May 2nd, 2019 as the Holocaust Remembrance Day in Laredo, Texas. Thank you.
I'd like to call upon Mr. Marco Franco, please, so that he can read a poem by Silva Chayevich, a teacher, ELA teacher at United High School.
I'll let you say the poem for the poem. I don't know if you can hear.
Okay, I would like to say the poem for the tune for the poem. And just to share with you who was Simcha Bunim Sayevich. He's one of the thousands of unknown Holocaust martyrs. He was a Polish poet who was sent to the Lodge ghetto with his wife Miriam and their little daughter Bimele in 1940. 2 years later, in 1942, his wife Miriam gave birth to a baby boy and was so weak that she was unable to stand up. They had no food. After Simcha learned that the potatoes and bread were being distributed, he hid Mimeli in the closet and the small baby boy in a drawer. When he came back with the food, they didn't find him in their apartment. They had been taken for deportation. 2 years later, in 1944, there was a call for the ghetto liquidation, and Simcha hid with another 11 people, but they were found. They were deported to Auschwitz, where he disappeared. And the poem is called Lech Lecha. That means go for it. In our Meli, my dearest child, stop your childish joy and the quicksilver of your laughter, and let us make ready for the unknown road. Do not look at me with such wonder in your large brown eyes and ask why and for what reason. We must leave our house. I myself, dear child, I'm already a grown man. I'm already big, and I don't know either why they are driving the bird from its nest. Put on the pair of warm pants which your mother only last night mended. As she sighed and laughed, you're realizing that the house lives in her happy, her last happy laughter. And we will be prepared to suffer everything and not know what awaits on the long journey. Whether a cup of warm coffee and a piece of bread with salt, or being thrown in a masquerade and covered alive. And now, Mimeli, my dearest child, stop, come, stop! Stop fooling around. Now is not the right time for that. I can call us at any minute. There, outside, the first groups on the journey, they're already driving by. Women, men, old people, heavy bags in their backs, in their arms, children. Do not weep. Do not weep, dear child. Please do not weep. Life is really beautiful and we yearn for it. In the together even more than always. And even more than anywhere else. And now, Nelly, my dear child, see how the second group is already passing by. They are going into exile. Soon, we will also have to go out. The evil day has arrived. The evil hour has arrived when I must issue a little girl the terrible Parsha of Lech Lecha. But how can we compare it to the bloody Lech Lecha of today? And God said unto Abraham, go forth from your land, and I will make a great people of you. And now, Mary, my dear child, put your little coat on and let's go. The third group is already dragging by, and we must be also part of them. Let us not weep. Let us not mourn and despise all enemies. Let us only smile that they may be amazed of what Jews are capable of. And though beneath our step lies death, over our heads is the divine presence of God. So, child, go forth with a new sacrifice of self, and with all the heart, the ones of God, come. Let's go and pray. Shema Yisrael. The Lord is one. Adonai Eloheinu. Adonai Echad.
Good evening and welcome. We're here tonight to remember the Holocaust, the worst genocide in our world's history. 6 million Jews were murdered. At that time, it represented 33% of all Jewish people living. Let me repeat that again. 1/3 of the total Jewish population was killed in the Holocaust. Therefore, every American Jew, including myself, has had their life touched in some way by the Holocaust. I'm a United States magistrate judge in Lorraine, and originally I was going to speak about another topic tonight. But last Saturday, 5 days ago, in my hometown of San Diego, California, a terrorist walked into a Jewish synagogue and began firing an assault rifle. Therefore, I feel compelled tonight to talk about another topic that's very closely related to the Holocaust, the dramatic rise of anti-Semitism in the United States. My maternal grandparents lived in a small suburb of Boston, Massachusetts. They were religious Orthodox Jews. When I was 10 years old in the summer of 1980s, I went to go visit them. And after a few days, I realized they only associated with Jewish people. And I thought this was odd and strange. And so I asked them why. And the short answer is, my grandparents were still heavily scarred by the Holocaust. In 1980, we were only 35 years removed from the Holocaust. My grandmother was born and grew up in a small town in the Ukraine. At a very young age, her family was lucky to escape persecution to get to the United States. But most of her extended family was not, and they were murdered in the Holocaust. There's a saying never again. And this is the credo that most Jews live by to make sure the Holocaust never again happens. In 1980, never again meant to my grandparents that they didn't feel safe associating with anybody other than Jewish people. I thought my grandparents were a little crazy, because growing up in San Diego, I had never once experienced an anti-Semitic act. I felt sad for my grandparents that they truly didn't feel safe around other people that were not Jewish. And I felt awful that they probably weren't going to live to see the day in their lifetime where they were not worried about anti-Semitism on a daily basis. Last Saturday, a 19-year-old American terrorist walked into a Jewish synagogue with an assault rifle and began firing. He killed one lady. He shot off parts of the rabbi's both hands. And he shot an 8-year-old girl by the name of Jonah Dahan. This synagogue was located less than 20 miles away from my house that I grew up in. And this young girl, the Dahan family, they had moved to the United States from Israel because their house in Israel, it got hit by a rocket fired by a terrorist. And when they first moved to San Diego, they experienced an anti-Semitic act when somebody spray painted their house with swastikas. Now for a second time, these people have been terribly traumatized with a terroristic anti-Semitic act when someone shot their 8-year-old daughter last week. If the Holocaust happened 75 years ago, why do Jewish people every year remember it like it just recently happened? Was last Saturday's shooting in San Diego a surprise? Was it a one-off random act of violence? Tragically, the answer is these have become common occurrences in the United States for Jewish people. Let me share some recent statistics that have been reported about religious hate crimes in the United States. According to the FBI, in 2017, there was over 1,500 incidents of religious hate crimes. Over 900 of those incidents were perpetrated against Jewish people. This is a staggering number, considering that Jewish people only make up less than 2% of the population in the United States. But in 2016, that 60% of all religious hate crimes across the United States were perpetrated against Jewish people. And if you think about 3 incidents alone that have occurred in the last 6 months. 6 months ago, another American terrorist walked into a synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and slaughtered 11 people. This was the deadliest attack on Jewish people in the history of the United States. Last month, in Newport Beach, California, which is a city about 90 miles north of San Diego, and it's an affluent city, high school students at a well-respected high school threw a Nazi tribute party where they proudly took pictures of swastikas and them doing Nazi salutes. And then we had last Saturday's shooting. I strongly believe that by far that the United States is the greatest country in the world. We are the most democratic. We are the most compassionate. We are the most diverse. And we are the most prosperous people. But how could it be in 2019 that the United States has become a more dangerous place for Jewish people than almost 40 years ago in 1980 when my grandparents were worried about anti-Semitism on a daily basis? I know that there are certain things, and I don't profess to know the answer to that complicated question. But I do know that young children are not born to be anti-Semitic. Babies aren't born to hate Jewish people. And we know that young children can be taught in schools, in public libraries, and in churches to be tolerant, and to respect all religions and people. And that's why tonight's event is so important to the Jewish community, because it gives us the chance to educate the greater public about remembering the Holocaust and about the dramatic rise of anti-Semitism that's going on. And we thank the City of Laredo for its support, and Jewish people know that all religions, including Christians and Catholics, stand united with Jewish people in remembering the Holocaust and fighting anti-Semitism. And I will end tonight by repeating something that Rabbi Goldstein has said for the last 5 days. Rabbi Goldstein is the rabbi that had parts of both hands shot off 5 days ago. And he's asked that all religions come together this weekend and show their unity and go to their synagogues and their churches on Saturday and Sunday and pray for the United States, pray for peace, and pray for people to respect all religions and diversity in the United States. Thank you.
And now, we'd like to welcome and thank our keynote speaker, Mr. John Balls, who is a World War II veteran from the 52nd Armored Infantry Battalion, 9th Armored Division. Would you like Mr. Balls?
Came up to us and said there's a factory about a mile down the road, and you will find a lot of Jewish women in there that were dropped there, and the SS is guarding them. We opened the shed, we went in there.
Though fighting still raged in the Pacific Theater, World War II in Europe officially ended with Germany's unconditional surrender on May 8, 1945. Allied armed forces advanced across Europe in the war's final stages, relentlessly pursuing the retreating German army. As they did, they stumbled onto camps, often accidentally, that had been established and run by the Nazis and their local collaborators. The Soviet army, advancing from the east, liberated Nazi camps in Poland, including Majdanek and Auschwitz. The British and Canadians, advancing from the west, liberated Bergen-Belsen and camps in northern Germany. The Americans, our focus here, liberated Dachau, Buchenwald, and other camps.
As their armies advanced across Europe, the Allies found thousands of people imprisoned in camps. They encountered piles of corpses and thousands of skeletal prisoners on the verge of death from malnutrition and disease. This was their first encounter with the horror of what would come to be known as the Holocaust. They began to understand that the Nazis had committed atrocities against civilians, the vast majority of them Jews, on an unimaginable scale, and that these atrocities were very different from the deaths caused by conventional warfare. A new category of crime had to be recognized to describe the intentional attempt to destroy a people. This crime came to be known as genocide. The soldiers were the very first outside witnesses of the Holocaust, an unprecedented case of genocide.
The testimonies of the first soldiers who entered the camps, known as the liberators, are important eyewitness accounts of the mass atrocities committed against the Jews of Europe by the Nazis and their collaborators. Hardened combat veterans, the American Jews were used to death. Many had been fighting for years, but they had never seen killings of civilians on the massive scale they discovered. Their first encounters with Holocaust survivors at this unique moment in time give us an essential and intensely human perspective on the difference between military war and genocide.
Leon Bass was 20 years old and was among the first U.S. soldiers to arrive at Buchenwald.
I can never forget that day, because when I walked through that gate, I saw in front of me what I call the walking dead. I saw human beings that had been beaten, had been starved, had been tortured, they've been denied everything. They had skeletal faces, with gimps eyes. Their heads had been clean shaved, and they were standing there, and they were holding on to one another just to keep them apart. I saw the clothing of little children. The little children that didn't survive. Up against the wall, there were mounds of clothing. I saw the caps, sweaters, the stockings, the shoes. But I never saw a child.
Harry Mogan was a Jewish refugee from Nazi persecution. He reached the United States and became a soldier and a liberator.
And we saw women on the floor, on wooden pallets. When I say women, we saw skeletons. Rags hanging on them, no shoes, bones instead of faces, and the stench was so horrible. It's hard to describe.
What the American soldiers found at Ohrdruf, a subcamp of Buchenwald, was so grisly that General Dwight D. Eisenhower, then the supreme commander of the Allied Expeditionary Force in Europe, together with Generals Patton and Bradley, arrived to inspect the camp for themselves. After his visit, Eisenhower cabled,
"The things I saw beggared description. The visual evidence and the verbal testimony of starvation, cruelty, and bestiality was so overpowering as to leave me a bit sick. I made the visit deliberately in order to be in a position to give first-hand evidence of these things, if ever, in the future, there develops a tendency to charge these allegations merely to propaganda."
These words are now engraved on the wall of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C.
Eisenhower's eyewitness testimony reveals that what he saw at Ohrdruf left a powerful impression. Eisenhower foresaw the problem of disbelief that could fuel the denial of atrocities committed by the Nazis and their collaborators. He emphasized that he purposely witnessed these horrors so that no one would later be able to deny what he saw with his own eyes. Eisenhower was convinced that the world needed to know. He made sure that members of Congress and journalists were brought to see the camp. He had all nearby soldiers whose units were not on the front lines visit as well. writing. We are told the American soldier does not know what he is fighting for. Now, at least, he will know what he is fighting against.
U.S. Army Staff Sergeant Horace Evers was among the first Allied soldiers to enter Adolf Hitler's abandoned unit quarters. He discovered Hitler's personal stationery. He crossed out Adolf Hitler, inserted his own name, and wrote a letter home about the camp he had seen just outside of Munich.
Dearest Mom and Lou, a railroad runs alongside the camp, and as we walked toward the boxcars on the track, I thought of some of the stories I previously had read about Dachau, and was glad of the chance to see for myself, just to prove once and for all that what I had heard was propaganda. But no, it wasn't propaganda at all. If anything, some of the truth had been held back. In 2 years of combat, you can imagine I've seen a lot of death. Furious deaths, mostly. But nothing has ever scared me as much as this. The first boxcar I came to had about 30 what were once humans in it. Bodies on top of each other. No telling how many. And then into the camp itself, filthy barracks. How can people do things like that? I never believed they could. Until now.
As American troops approached Dachau, they saw ghastly evidence of recent mass prisoner executions. Anger led some to shoot SS guards still at the camp, but Dachau not only fueled their rage, it also aroused their compassion. Paul Parks was a 22-year-old American soldier from Indianapolis who witnessed Dachau after liberation.
These people came out of these barracks on the buildings, they striped uniforms on, and just devastated shape. One of the fellows came out who spoke English, and he said, "Are you American?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Thank God," and he hit the ground and started to pray.
Who were the people that these soldiers found? They were the victims of Nazi ideology and hatred. The Jews among them had managed to survive the Holocaust, whose goal was total annihilation. Other prisoners, including Roma, homosexuals, and communists, had managed to survive persecution and murder. For many, liberation came too late. Hundreds continued to die every day of starvation, exhaustion, and disease. But for others, the soldiers were larger than life. They represented the moment of salvation that many survivors had despaired they might not live to see.
Helen Greenbaum survived imprisonment in the Warsaw Ghetto, forced labor at a number of camps, including Majdanek and Ravensbrück, and a death march to Dachau, where she was finally liberated.
They opened all the gates, and we started on all four, because they let us know that the soldiers are coming. And we went out to greet the American soldiers. And we dropped to their feet and we kissed their boots. Some of them that couldn't walk, they were just crawling. They picked up and carried them into the camps.
Some of the soldiers broke down and cried at the sight of the survivors. Many made the conscious decision to put their military objectives temporarily on hold in order to care for the broken and dying prisoners that they found. In most cases, the liberators treated them with sympathy and kindness. After the Germans had mercilessly stripped them of their dignity, the liberators were the first to restore their humanity.
Anton Mason was about 18 when he was liberated by American soldiers at Buchenwald. He had survived Auschwitz, where most of his family was murdered.
I found that my father was dead, and I was truly at the end of my rope. He says, I don't know if I can go. But there is something that's just impossible to explain. I just decided that I'm not going to give up. I'm going to try. And then, out of no place, and it really happened, the Americans arrived. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I said, How is this possible? I walked over to a GI, and young guy, and I asked him if he could give me some food. I was very hungry. So he took out, he gave me a Nestle bar, and he gave me a little gold envelope. It said Nescafe. I didn't know what it was. So he gave me a little food. Now, you know how much that food was worth? He could have gotten anything for it in Weimar. But he gave it to me.
Solly Ganor lay half dead in the snow after a death march from Dachau. He remembers the unshaven, tired soldier who knelt down, gently touched him on the shoulder, and said, "You're free, boy. You're free now." Solly was surprised by the soldier's Japanese features. His liberator, Clarence Matsumura, was a member of a segregated regiment of Nisei soldiers, American children of Japanese immigrants. Clarence smiled at Solly, a smile that stayed with him ever since. Solly has called Clarence his angel. Ironically, African-American GIs like Paul Parks and Leon Bass, and Japanese Americans like Clarence Matsumura, served in segregated units in the U.S. Army. They fought for freedom and democracy, despite facing discrimination at home and within the Army. Nisei soldiers celebrated the survivors' freedom, even though racial tension and fear during the war had caused many of their own families to be interned in camps in the U.S.
For countless survivors of the Holocaust, that first contact with the liberators was the moment they began to feel safe after years of fear, loss, and rupture. But for many, liberation was the saddest moment of their lives. It was the moment they realized they were completely alone in the world. For many liberators, their first contact with the survivors was a powerful moment of insight. Trained to wage war, many chose to suspend their military missions for the humanitarian mission of giving care and respect to the survivors. The experiences of the survivors and the liberators moved many to become a moral voice, sharing their stories.
I've been trying to give testimony for a long time by just going around and speaking to people. And I think it's important that I speak about what I saw and that others speak about what they saw. Are we looking for credit? No. No one's looking for credit. No one wants a pat on the back. All we want to do is say, will this be prevented from happening again? That's the most basic thing.
And now we'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. John Ball, World War II veteran, 52nd Armored Infantry Battalion, 9th Armored.
It's very important to me that I tell you what I know about the Holocaust. It's some people I've read where some people don't even believe it happened. Folks, it happened, and I am a witness to it. I walked into the Bergen-Belsen prison camp. I was just a 19-year-old kid from Laredo in the Army. I was a PFC. And the first thing I heard when I opened the big gate is like somebody scored a touchdown. And I said, but it was very muffled. But the people were so glad to see my American uniform that it was a great day for me. I didn't know what was in store. People, I saw the worst scene I have ever seen in my life. I still remember it right here. I'm looking at it right now in my mind. People just in racks, they got up to look at me and back down in their racks. A man came up to me trying to give me a sleeveless rabbit skin coat. And I told him, I can't take anything. I'm an American soldier. You're free to go. You're free. Yippa, 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 yippa. He was speaking Yiddish. Of course, I didn't understand it. But I told him again, no, you're free to go. I can't take anything. And I took the thing. Boy, it was great. I put it under my jacket. Because in combat, if you're an infantryman, MOS 745, you're always cold, you're always hungry, and you're always scared. All three. These guys out here with the caps know what I'm talking about. Because they've been through it. And people, you cannot realize how bad war is. War is terrible. People should learn to settle their differences. The country should learn to settle their differences instead of with, they should settle their differences with deeds and words rather than bullets and bombs. People, war doesn't help anything. My family, we were 3 people in the war in combat. 2 of us came back. My brother, First Lieutenant Louis Ball, was shot down on his 27th mission over Orvieto, Italy. And when he was 27 years old, people, I know what it means to lose somebody in battle. And the message here, you've heard it before. Never, never, never forget that the Holocaust happened. Some people don't even believe that it happened. It happened, and it can happen again if we are not watchful. The Jewish people suffered tremendously. Why? I don't know. Why? They're beautiful. They're wonderful. What's wrong? I can't understand it to this day. But people, my message is, even 70 years after this war, I was in it for a long, long time, and don't kid yourself. You're never at ease. When you finally get to be like Audie Murphy, he said it very well. I prayed to be killed. I prayed. I had enough. I was with Patton's Army, and I was in 31 battles. I was wounded twice. And people, I cannot tell you, you never, never, never want to do that again. Never. and you never want to forget the Holocaust. It happened. I saw people laying one on top of each other on a street. Just you couldn't breathe. You had to hold something in your nose because it was terrible. And it did happen. I'll never forget it. It's here in my mind. I think about it very often, and sometimes I cry, people. I cry because people should never, ever do that to other people. And I don't know what the Germans, what Hitler was thinking of, but I'm glad it's over. And I am so glad to be able to talk to you and mention what everybody that has talked before here. Don't ever forget the Holocaust. It happened, and it can happen again to you, to any one of you. It can happen again. Don't ever forget it. It happened. Thank God it's over. But 6 million people died. 6 million Jewish people. Why? Who knows? It's mind-boggling. This kid, I was 19 years old. I'll never forget it. It's right here.
What did you know before going into the war? What background did you have? Before you went into the war, did you know what was going on?
No. No, I knew that Hitler was a bad person. I knew that he was conquering nations, Poland, everything. I knew that I knew that he was a bad person. I knew that I had to go and help. The greatest day of my life, I can tell you, is when I put that infantry, United States Army infantry uniform on me. When I became a soldier. People, I'll never, ever forget that. And these guys out here with the caps, they know what I'm talking about.
Okay, it's April 1945. You were under General Patton, but your army was lent to General Montgomery.
Oh, yeah. We were loaned to Field Marshal Montgomery, and that day, I walked into the Bergen-Belsen prison camp. Why, I don't know. I cannot remember my instructions for that day. I walked in, and this is what I saw. I saw things that I couldn't believe. I was shocked. I've never seen anything like that. And the smell was terrible. At that time, I couldn't believe what I was seeing, people. You cannot imagine what this 19-year-old kid saw. I went back and told my buddies, you won't believe what I'm going to tell you. And probably they didn't.
Can you give us a general idea of what you saw? What was the landscape like? What did you see? What was the landscape like? What did you see in the road?
In the war?
In the road.
Oh yeah, on the road, bodies piled on top of each other. I mean, there must have been hundreds. People, I've never seen anything like that. This was hell. I never knew what to think. I was very naive.
What was the first thing you did, and who did you talk to?
I talked to the man that came to give me a rabbit skin coat, and I told him I couldn't take it. I was an American soldier to go. He was free. He was free, but right then and there, a the British came in behind me, and they're the ones that did whatever they had to do. I was loaned to the British. The 9th Armored Division was loaned to the British.
There was a group of prisoners that sat on a bridge in the middle of Dresden.
Oh yeah. We took Dresden, and in the middle of a bridge they had put a lot of Jewish people because they thought I was on a tank at that time, and they thought we were going to bomb the bridge. And we weren't. We were bombing the railroad tracks and the cars and everything. So they put the Jewish people on the bridge, and later one of the survivors of that camp, what was her name?
Gerda Weizmann Plank.
Yeah, Gerda came to Laredo, and we talked about the same thing, because he knew what I was talking about. She recognized me in the audience, and she pointed me out. I had to stand up and wave at the people, because I was there. We didn't bomb the bridge, we bombed the railroad track.
What else do you remember about the Holocaust, and what is your message going forward about war?
War is useless, people. Again, I tell you, we've got to solve our problems with words and deeds, not bullets and bombs. Young kids are going into war that you don't want. I don't even want to think about it. Sometimes at night when I'm almost asleep, I cry, because I remember how bad it was. How there was no hope. I was either get this damn war over with or kill me, one of the two. I've had it, but I served, and I have to serve, and I'm so proud of it. But folks, if they paid me $92 million, I wouldn't do it again.
Yesterday I asked you, why did you fight? And this is what you said. I fought for equality, my home, and my town. I fought for freedom, for honor, and my country. I fought for the right to make my own choices. I fought for my brothers, my sisters, and my parents. I fought for the home I once knew before the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. I fought to protect my country from people like Hitler. I fought to live a free and productive life. I fought for you.
That's right. Show me that thing that I want to show you an article that is in the Reader's Digest.
We'll make them a copy.
The latest, okay, you've got to read that little blurb. It's by a sergeant. The magazine put in the 43 a contest. What did you fight for? This guy that I made a copy. Okay, and if you want a copy, you've got to read that. That guy put it much better than what I can tell you. But people, I fought for you. I fought for people. I knew that we had to win. We have to win. And there were times, people, when it didn't look like we were going to win. It was bad.
You talked about being in a foxhole and looking up. Can you tell us what you saw?
One of the greatest things was sometimes you have to dig a foxhole. I've dug so many foxholes and slept in them, and I'd look up and I'd see thousands of bombers going. First you could hear them, and then you could see them. God, that was the most beautiful thing in the world. They were going to bomb Germany, and then they would come back some were smoking, some were on fire, and some didn't make it back. But that was one of the most beautiful things that I saw in, believe it or not, in El Paso. People, you've got to know, you got to understand that a rifleman, combat rifleman, you dig a hole and you better be under it, not sticking out your head. You better be under it. And it's an experience. Hey, any questions? Yes, I am married. So give me a hand.
And now I'd like to call upon Rabbi Gabriel Friedman from the Congregation of Usat in the Esther Fisher Sisterhood in the reading of the prayers and the cantor service.
Thank you very much. We will first begin with the candle ceremony. Please rise.
Prayer for the children. Almighty God, full of mercy, remember the generation of children reared for slaughter. Remember the orphans of the ghettos whose parents were torn from them. Children forced to live in misery and hunger to be reunited with their parents in the heaps of ashes. Almighty God, may the cries of the innocents throughout the world penetrate the armor of heartless men, so that they may learn love and compassion. Amen. Amen.
The congregation would like to call David Goldberg and Renela Torrielli.
Prayer for the mothers. Almighty God, full of love, remember all the mothers who carried their babies, born and unborn, to their execution, led their children to the gas chambers, witnessed their death. Let their anguish, pain, and torture never be forgotten. In our memory, they will live forever. Merciful God, remember the families torn and destroyed, and may no family ever be forced to make this journey again. Amen.
The congregation would like to call on Joshua Drucker and Larry Norton, please.
Prayer for the fathers. Almighty God who dwells in heaven, remember the pain of fathers who helplessly witnessed the starvation death of their daughters or watched their sons died in mass graves. Almighty God, remember their torturous walk through the valley of death, a valley saturated with the blood of their children. We pray that never again shall any father be made to helplessly witness the cruel slaughter of his offspring. Amen.
Congregation would like to call to Ala Reed. Almighty God, full of pity, remember the side of the elders, the sages, and teachers of faith, who rather than instructing the people who live in peace, were forced to teach them how to die with dignity. Ruler of the universe, fill our hearts with compassion toward the elderly and the infirm and the sick of today. By helping them to live in peace and die with dignity, we shall honor the memory of those who perished. Amen. Congregation would like to call Ike Epstein and Arlie Dempsey.
Prayer for the fighters. Almighty God, who rules on high, remember the fighters of the ghetto, partisans, and members of the resistance. They fought without weapons and ammunition, only with hope. Their heroism paved the way for the rebirth of the people. Ruler of the universe, open the hearts of those who for lust of power or fanaticism, of belief, kill and maim. Teach them to understand that there cannot be love of God without love for man, and no belief can override the commandment, thou shalt not kill.
Congregation would like to call Stephen Greenwood and Mr. Alfred.
Prayer for the righteous. Almighty God, full of justice, remember that a blessing to those among the nations who aided, hid, cured, and sacrificed those who endangered during the years of the persecution and slaughter. Those righteous among the nations served as your hand of mercy on earth. May they never be forgotten. Their loving kindness is a standard for all people on earth to emulate. Amen.
im Kedoshim und Yorim Kezoak Yamandirim, נשמות, אחינו ויקירתנו שנהרגו ושנשחטו ושנשרפו בביתות ובמכונות השמדה, באהבו שנולדים לקיים את זכרם לדור ודור ולנצח נצחים, בעל הרחמים יסיריהם בסתר כנפו לעולמים, ויצרוך חיים את נשמותיהם, אדוני חיים ונחלתם, וינוחו בשלום על משכבם ונאמר אמן. Exalted, compassionate God, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure, with the soul of all our brethren, men, women, and children, who were slaughtered and burned in the ghettos and concentration camps. May the memory endure, inspiring faith and loyalty in our lives. May the souls be bound up in the bond of life. May the rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. A human being is a precious thing. Life is precious. The memories of the victims is precious. And also to remember and celebrate the heroism of those who liberated Europe and all the victims is precious. So we will say Kaddish for the memory of those who perished in those horrendous years. Itkadal v'tkadash merabah. בעלמא דיברה חילותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי בכל בית ישראל, בגלה ובזמן קריב יבראו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם עולמי עולמיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשה וריחפו, מעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, קדוש ופתה ונחמתה, תמידה ועלמה ויבראו, אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מישמיה, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ממרו אמן. עושה שלום ממרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ממרו אמן. If we can extract a lesson from the first chapter in the Bible, we will extract that every human being is precious. That every human being was created in the image of God. And that we have to learn that lesson and again in every generation. May this lesson be learned by all of us together. Thank you very much for your presence. A big round of applause to Mr. John Walls, his presence, his life, his testimony. What he did for all of us today. Thank you, Mr. Walls. Thank you, the veterans, and thank you all.
Thank you.